Luckiest girl. Hey everyone, my guest today is the author, actress, activist, Camryn Manheim. Camryn is known worldwide for her Emmy and Golden Globe award-winning role as attorney Eleanor Frutt on the legal drama series The Practice. In her long career that spans over 4 decades, she has appeared in over 60 television shows, 40 movies, more plays than we could mention in a lifetime. Currently, she is filming the latest season of Law and Order, so you can find her on the streets of New York City and say hi. She's very friendly. She made her Broadway debut in Deaf West Tony-nominated production of Spring Awakening. She, my listeners, is a New York Times best-selling author with her book, Wake Up, I'm Fat. Wake Up, I'm Fat. When she's not filming, she's teaching and lecturing all over the world and just doing great things for humanity. I am so lucky and happy that my friend Camryn Manheim is on the podcast today. Hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I'm such a fan of the podcast. I listen to it when I ride my bike in New York, when I get my nails done, and I learn so much about people. And I actually feel like I'm the lucky one to be here.
Oh, well, can we just start with that? Because you, as a peer and someone who came up at the same time with me, and so I feel like we have the same background to technology in terms of it not being as intuitive as it might be for your son, Milo Cameron Manheim. Not Cameron Manheim. What's Milo's middle name?
Jacob. My mother was like, Milo's not a Jewish name. I'm like, Mom, I stuck a Jacob in there just to make you happy.
It's all good, just to like a seal of approval. You are riding your bike, your city bike or your own bike. I'm not sure. Do you rent or own?
No, I use the city bikes, mostly the electric ones, and I go all over, yeah, all over
Okay,
Manhattan.
how are you filming yourself safely in real time?
I know I think I need to do a video about
A
how I'm filming
tutorial.
myself safely in real time because people are upset about it. At first, people are upset that I didn't have a good enough helmet. They don't like it when I wear my parka over my helmet because they don't think I have good peripheral vision. And now I'm getting a lot of, how are you filming yourself? Do you have a crew? And it's true, I do film myself. I am a long time bike rider, not just bicycles. I rode a motorcycle for most of my life. And so I feel like I do have a little bit of a connection to the road. But I do film myself on my camera, but I have this really cool strap called a bandolier. So I basically have my hand close to the handlebars. I'm filming, and if I see ahead and I'm looking ahead, that I need to have a handlebar, I just drop my phone and grab the handlebars. So it's not like I'm one hand driving without any type of safety net. I know that doesn't make people feel better, but that's how I film my adventures on my city bike.
Well, I had a boyfriend who had a motorcycle, and the spidey sense that people who grew up riding a motorized two-wheeler
Yeah,
type of vehicle, it is, I mean, obviously safety first, and I'm glad you're explaining it. And as your mother, I'm still not thrilled
I
as
know.
a fan, I love the content, but I do feel like there is this like way in which your senses are on high alert. My boyfriend at the time said to me, I'm never worried about my driving. I'm worried about everybody else. That's the thing when you're on a motorcycle.
That's exactly the thing. And there's the other kind of code of ethic to ride a motorcycle is I believe no one sees me ever.
Hmm.
So no one knows I'm there. So nobody opening a car door knows I'm there. Nobody swerving to the left or turning knows I'm there. So as long as you are very aware that you're alone in that little space, you can drive beautifully for yourself and also for other people. But it does take a lot of attention, to.
Right. Okay, so let's just start with No One Knows I'm There, because for a woman who wrote a book called Wake Up, I'm Fat, and a one-woman show, and sort of in reading it and knowing you, but I have to do this as if, I can answer so many questions about you, but I want you to answer in your own voice for people who don't know you. I feel like this idea of No One Knows I'm There, in some ways, as a young person, has informed this extraordinary career you have. Um, Can you talk about, by the way, there's your little known fact. You've been riding motorcycles from a very young age. Um, Talk a little bit about growing up and when you realized actually everyone's going to know I'm there.
That's, this is what makes you so good. You just get right to the heart of it. For the longest time, nobody did know I was there. I was dismissed and not really paid attention to, even all through acting school, really. I knew something, I had something percolating that needed to get out, and I didn't believe them when they told me it just wasn't the right field for me or there wasn't a place for me. Um, and so I don't know where that is born or how that manifested. My parents are activists and they fight for civil rights, and maybe it's that. But even they thought it was really cute. I wanted to be an actor and thought it was really sweet and silly. And then when I really wanted to be an actor, they were terrified. I
Mhm.
mean, what parent wants to send their child down this very brutal road? Um, and
Which you
so
are doing.
which I
Which
am
you
doing, by the way.
are doing. Yes.
Actually, I didn't send him down the road. That train left the station when he was 5 years old, but we can talk about that.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I had some muse. I had some hand on my shoulder. I can't explain it, but I really did, defy everyone who said this really wasn't the right place for me. And when no one was paying attention to me, I decided to write a one-woman show about what I am an expert on, which is growing up fat in America. So I wrote a one-woman show called Wake Up, I'm Fat, about my experiences. It wasn't poor me, sad me, pity me. It was more like, bring it on.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
because as a teacher and an educator, you always say, hey, write your own material, but don't just write it to write it. Write something that really matters to you. It has to resonate. So I wrote about a subject that no one was really talking about. Um, that's not true. There was one woman, Claudia Schiffer, had written a play called Blown Sideways Through Life, and that really, really affected me. So I want to give her those props because I was like, she was writing about other things as well, but she touched on it. And I'm like, that is my story. I need to talk about that. And you know, it's a that's a crazy title, right? Wake Up, I'm Fat. That's scary for people. What are they getting involved in? And it ended up being very humorous and feisty, and it changed my life. I I I started doing it at small theaters all around New York, Home for Contemporary Theater and Art. It moved to Plastic Stage Company, and eventually it moved to the theater of my dreams, which I think is the most important theater in my entire life, which was Joseph Papp's Public Theater. And from there, my whole life changed.
Well, can you talk about that? Because there is a connection between the practice, which is the role that really put you on the map. Still, I'm sure
Yes.
people still call out to you for that part, even though you've done millions of other things. Tell the story of how, by the way, did Mark Brokaw direct Wake Up, I'm Fat?
Yes, he did.
Okay, I had like a
Mark,
little memory of that and you at the Public Theater, which is just a dream. And the fact that you made that happen for yourself is extraordinary. Um, Someone came to see it, and is that the connection to the rest of the story?
Yes, kind of. I was just doing my show. To me, I had almost met the pinnacle of success to be on a main stage show at the Public Theater. Seriously, I'd been an understudy. I had been a spear carrier. I had, done everything I could at the public. And now here I was under George C. Wolfe's reign doing my one-woman show. And this is the story as I remember it. Other people have their own ideas, but this is my story as I
Fair enough.
remember it.
This is your
Um,
episode.
this is my episode. I'm the writer of this. Um,
Exactly.
I was having an opening night for this show, and my dear friend Marcia Gay Harden, who had achieved some success. I mean, very exciting. She was my only friend I knew who had really been on a movie, Miller's Crossing and the Coen Brothers. It was amazing. And she's like, "Well, who's coming to your opening night?" I'm like, I don't know, just my friend. She's like, well, you got to have some fancy people at your opening night. And I'm like, I don't really have I didn't even have a agent or a manager at the time.
Oh my
And
gosh.
I did all of this by myself. And she was like, Camryn, you have to have fancy people. And I'm like, well, maybe you can invite some of your fancy people. So she did. She invited her agents and her managers, and her manager invited a casting director who was in New York from Los Angeles to run the New York City Marathon. And when the Marsha's manager said to the casting director, let's call him Randy, Randy, will you come to this one woman show with me? Marsha, my client's making me go with this unknown girl called Wake Up, I'm Fat. And Randy's like, I would rather stick a fork in my head than see a one woman show the night before I run the marathon. And she's like, it's an hour and 10 minutes. And so Randy came and I did my one woman show. And afterwards, Randy came up to me and he said, why don't I know who you are? And I just remember me saying, isn't that your job? Like, I don't know who you are. You're
Is that
from LA. You're
rhetorical?
supposed to
Yeah.
know who all the tour de forces are,
God damn it, Randy.
And he said to me, do you have any? There's a show I'm casting and they're looking for a streetwise and sassy gum smacking attorney. And I'm like, oh my God, that sounds great. But also sounded like a million miles away. I was never
Right.
getting a job as a lawyer playing a streetwise and sassy lawyer. And he goes, do you have any tape? And that was back in the day, you'll remember, it cost us $15 to make a VHS copy. And then, so the next question is, why do I have a tape? Well, the truth is, I I had two jobs on television, not because I had an agent or manager who got them for me. It's because I'm fluent in sign language. And they went to the Sign Language Association and said, do you have any sign language people who are actors? And they go, oh yeah, we have a girl from NYU. So I was actually on Law and Order as a lawyer who could sign, and I was on New York Undercover as a lawyer, two Dick Wolf shows as a lawyer who could sign. And I had a VHS copy, a $15 copy of those two scenes. And I handed them to Randy. And I'm like, when you're done with it, can I have it back? Because they're
That was
expensive.
$15. Yeah, totally. That's fair.
And he goes back to Los Angeles after he runs the marathon. This is before cell phones. It's not like I could even thank him. We don't have computers to be thanking people. And he goes back and gives the tape to his boss, who's doing this big show, the practice. And the boss says to him, she's not what I'm looking for. I need a streetwise, sassy, gum smacking girl. And she's so uptight. I mean, she's wearing pearls. She's wearing that suit. And Randy fought for me. And he said, I just saw her one woman show. She is feisty and sassy and streetwise. And the costumer put her in those pearls. Like, what's wrong with you? She's wearing that outfit because someone else put her in it. And so he said, okay, I'm willing to meet her if she wants to meet me. So Marsha's manager calls me and says, well, good news and bad news. David is willing to meet you. I mean, he wasn't like in love with the tape, but Randy really convinced him. And so if you want to meet him, he'd be willing to meet you. And I'm like, oh my God, I've heard about this. They send you first class and there's cookies. There's those chocolate chip warm cookies. I've heard all about it. And then Marsha's manager said, it's not really like that. If you want to get yourself out there, he'll meet you. We're really not at the point where they would send you on a first class ticket out to LA. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I make $350 at the Public every week. I'm supposed to go out to LA and meet someone who's not even interested in me? And she said, these are the opportunities that change things. And the casting director, is really supporting you. So I asked my parents, I flew out, I meet David Kelly. It was probably the worst 4 minutes of my life because David didn't want to meet me. He was forced into it by Randy Stone. And so he just and he's very kind of dry. And he's like, so you're an actor? And I'm like, yeah, David, that's why I just flew across the continent and spent my life savings to meet you. And it just kind of went downhill from there. It was just 4 minutes of he wasn't interested. And I'd been in a lot of auditions for theater. So I knew when a audition was going well, and this one really wasn't. So I was about to get up. I was on my way out, and I noticed that David Kelly had a cribbage board sitting next to his couch. And for those of you who don't play cribbage, it's a card game that uses a little wooden board. It has pegs. It's a wonderful little game for backstage antics because it's quick. And something you don't know about me, here's a little known fact: extremely competitive, play every game known to mankind. And I don't play for money, but I play for honor, which is much more expensive. So I said to David, as I'm walking out, do you play cribbage? Because it seems crazy to me that a man married to Michelle Pfeiffer would have time to play cribbage, because who wouldn't just want to be with her? So I said, do you play cribbage? And he looked at me, and for the first time in the entire meeting, he showed a little signs of life.
Mm-hmm.
And he just kind of he kind of puffed up and said, I do play cribbage, but I don't think you want to go there with me. And I just said, well, how about this? Why don't we just screw this audition, and I'll play you right now for the part. If I win, I walk out with the script, and if I lose, you never see me again. He goes, oh no, I don't think you understand. I play the computer. And I went, well, I don't think you understand. I play for money. And then he was like,
and honor.
And honor. And by the way, the honor really comes in later. He goes, I don't think you understand. I just skunked my mother, which is very hard to do in cribbage. And I said, you know what I do understand? I smell your fear. I go, come on, David, let's just play for the part. If you're so good,
Yeah,
I'm telling you, if you win, you will never see me again. No Chicago Hope, no picket fences.
nothing.
Then I get the name of the show wrong. I said, no prosecutors. Like, I don't know from the practice to the prosecutors. And he's like, I can't make that bet with you. And I'm like, why not? He goes, because if I were to lose, and that's a big if, I wouldn't be able to make good on the deal because I haven't even written the script yet. But I'll make you this deal. If you get out of my office right this minute, you'll be the first person to get the script when it's done. And I said, you got a deal. I shook his hand. I walked out. Randy followed me. He's like, what the hell just happened? I'm like, your boss thinks he can beat me at cribbage. It's like, I just couldn't even believe how this whole meeting went.
Yeah.
And I walked out, I went home. And the next thing I know, Marcia's manager, who's been my manager for 27 years, is calling me on the phone going, now you do have to fly out and meet them. And they're going to pay for the flight, and there's going to be cookies.
Oh my God.
You have to go for a producer session. And that's how it all started, just in that crazy moment where all I had left to do was surrender and be myself.
And someone, we don't know who it is, some higher power, God, coincidence, like there was cribbage, right? Like just the idea, and that you were able in that moment to see that cribbage and go for it, right? Like to actually just bring your full self. Wait, so when you audition and producer session and network, were there other people also reading for the role?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because what happened was, and this is crazy,
Okay.
is that I did go back out for a producer session, but I did something, I had never auditioned for a television show before. I don't know the rules. I never had an agent and manager who was telling me these rules.
Right.
So when Marcia's manager's like, they're sending you out, and this is the real thing this time, and you're going to go in and read with the casting director and meet some of the producers. So this is the session before network. It's where you meet kind of the producers to
the
see
final callback.
Yeah, maybe there's 30 people coming in for this time, and then they're going to pick their favorite 3 and bring them for another huge audition later. So I said, who's the casting director? Like I would know, because I didn't know any. And she goes, her name is Judith Weiner. And I looked her up in the phone book, and I called her and I said, Judith, I've never done this before. I don't even know what this room is going to look like or feel like. I am flying in the day before. Could I please come to your office and read with you prior to the audition the next day? Because I honestly, I don't know what it is.
Right.
And she thought that was really sweet, kind of like my parents thinking it was so sweet I wanted to be an actor.
Right.
She's like, of course. And here I was asking a casting director for their help and guidance.
Right.
And she goes, of course, I guess she had heard about me through David, like I want to meet this one girl. And so she said, of course. And I went to her office in, near Warner Brothers or wherever. And she spent a good hour and a half with me and told me what the whole thing was going to feel like, look like, what happens when I walk in, but what I should or shouldn't say. She was so fantastic. And then when I got there the next day, she was like my buddy
Yeah.
and rooting for me,
Yeah.
really rooting for me. So I did the producer session, and I think I did a perfectly good job. I mean, I was probably nervous, and that was
Hmm.
before I learned about beta blockers.
The
Um,
best. The best. Yep.
um, and then I came home. And then, I don't know, a few days later, because this goes really fast in this industry, Marsha's manager, I think we can call her Mary Ellen now because she's my manager.
I feel like we can. I feel like we know each other well enough now to be on a first name basis. Yes.
She called me and said, I've got good news and I've got bad news. They want you to go back out for the network audition. But the bad news is what they're offering is really, really hideous. It's like I've never seen this low of an offering in my entire career. And I said, well, first of all, it seemed like a lot of money to me, even,
Sure. Yeah.
television money can be very, very, seductive. And I said, that seems perfect to me. She goes, no, as an honorable manager, I can't let you accept this. And I'm like, well, I'm very nervous about having to go back. Like, I feel I'm going to lose this role if I have to now fly back again and go to the networks, because I know they're looking for like, what girl is going to look good on a mug and a t-shirt and swag that we can sell in the, ABC store or whatever. I go, I'm just going to lose it. I go, why don't you just tell them that I'll accept this trash heap money proposal now. But if I have to go back there and audition, I want 4 times the amount. And she's like, Camryn, it doesn't work like that. And I'm like, why not? She goes, because it doesn't. You have to go back to the network. And I go, but why? David wants me. I was just there. I was just at the Aspen Comedy Festival doing my one-woman show. I met a lot of these people. Why don't you just ask for me? And I could hear in her voice her kind of going, oh my God, this girl does not get it at all. And I go, just say, I'll take it right now, like 48 hours. And if I have to fly back on Friday, you're going to ask for what you ask for all of your actors. And, a day goes by. The next morning, I remember I was living in this apartment, which we can talk about later. I am living in my college apartment right now.
Wait,
It did
what?
not look like this then. I had a payphone on this brick wall right here, and I remember getting the phone call, and she goes, "I got good news and I got bad news." And I go, "What is it?" She goes, "The good news is they accepted your offer, and the bad news is they accepted your offer." And I slid down that brick wall and I sobbed my eyes out. It took me like 20 minutes to get my shit together to even call my parents. Um, and that's how it was born. And she's like, I don't understand how this works, Camryn. I've never done this in my life. I've never seen an actor go, how about I don't go to network, but I'll take this offer.
Yeah. Okay.
Sometimes it's beginner's luck. I had no idea how it all worked.
Unbelievable. Now, let me ask you this. This is a little nitty gritty, but just for a moment. At the time, was it just a pilot or was it a straight to series sort of thing?
It was just a pilot. We went and shot it in Boston because, it took place in Boston. And then I went back to being a sign language interpreter, and going and bartending because I didn't know if I was
Right.
going to have a job. And then, in fact, it didn't get picked up right away. It got picked up as a mid-season replacement. So generally, you shoot a pilot in May or April, and then you start working in July, and it's very seamless. But we didn't get picked up in July. We got picked up for January. And so I had shot this pilot. It was the most exciting thing in my life. I hadn't seen it. There was nowhere for me to see it. They don't send it to you. I didn't have a computer.
Or a $15 VHS tape.
I was like,
Nobody
please
sent
just
it.
send it to me on a
Yeah.
VHS. You owe me one, God damn it. Um, and I waited till January, and then I had to move to LA, which was heartbreaking for me because New York was the love of my life. I mean, I didn't realize when I moved to LA why I was so depressed, and I couldn't really talk to my friends about how depressed I was because they were all, well, you've got a job, shut up, you can't be
Right.
depressed.
Right,
But I was very depressed, and I think back and I'm like, I broke up with the love of my life, New York
right,
City.
right. I get that. Um, okay, so I first of all, I have a question for you that I've always wanted to know, which you may know the answer to. How did David Kelly write The Practice and Ally McBeal Appointment Television at the same time? Because I recall he actually wrote them.
Yes,
Ha
he wrote
like,
almost all of them.
so
He's
are
like,
you
I
like
mean,
over here? We're over here. Like, do you feel like you were fighting for his attention? Like, is he just able to play cribbage and write two or three shows for network at the same time?
he is a little like Oz, and I mean this in a very loving way. He's like an idiot savant. Like this is the
Mhm.
thing he does. It's like he does it like he's riding a bike, or just like it's the back of his hand. He would turn in these incredible. In fact, other writers would write scripts, and then he would fix them, and he was. It was pretty shocking. And then when a third show would come up, we'd be like, "What's
What
happening?"
is happening?
He eventually allowed loosened the reins a little bit and let other wonderful writers jump on board. But yeah, he was writing most of Ally. I mean, no, but it's hard to find writers to write Ally McBeal scripts because
Those voice,
they're
yeah,
wacky and that
yeah,
voice is very,
yeah.
it's very distinct. But I don't know how he had a beautiful, wonderful love affair with his wife. Watching them together was always it was very inspiring because they really love each other so much. How he how he captained all of these ships, and but he was like Oz. We didn't see him much, you know. We didn't we and back to the cribbage thing is he wouldn't play me for a long, long time. And the end of that first season, we did 13 episodes that first season because we were a mid-season replacement. And at the last table read, I stood up and said, David, I've asked you to play cribbage with me since the day we started, and you've refused. I think you should just take the forfeit, and we can just you know, call it quits.
That
He's
seems
like, I'm
fair.
not forfeiting to you. And then he said, I will play you, but I want to tell everyone here, we're going to seal the verdict. That's something we used to always say, because if you told the verdict, like if you had a 3-part show and people go, what happens? Is he, and he'd always say, seal the verdict. So people watch to find
Yep,
out.
yep.
So that day he came to my dressing room and we played cribbage, and we played, somebody won, and no one spoke of it. And there was not even any kind of like winking or anything. Someone won, that was it. I didn't want to lose my job saying one thing or the other. And, that was the deal we made. And then, I don't know, the following day, it could have been 2 days later. I don't know. This is my story as I remember it. But this is true because I have evidence. He wrote a letter to the entire crew and the cast of the practice. And it just said, this letter is in my book, so you can see exactly what it said. It said, to the cast and crew of the practice, cribbage is no longer allowed to be played on the set of the practice. Gambling is illegal in the state of California. And that was it. Signed, the Practice Cribbage Association president, David Kelly.
Everything about this story is making me cry. It is just the most incredible arc, right? Like
Oh
if we
yeah.
were writing this series, it's like this thing of you showing up for yourself, like time and time again. I really believe deep in my heart, if the cribbage game wasn't there, maybe something else would have caught your eye. Like you just have this uncanny ability to like read a room, read people, to really tune into not just what's good for you, but what's good for people around you. The idea, even ASL, right? Like ASL, I have constantly gone like, why are our choices French or Spanish? Like,
Mm.
why is ASL and maybe a little bit more now, some more, I don't know, some more schools are sort of offering it, but certainly not in the public schools of America. And you're sort of I read the book, so I know that it sort of was born out of, oh, I need a language to get into college. Oh, they have, sign language here. I will take it. But like, what is it that you found in sort of learning this language? I mean, clearly it opened up doors for you
Sure did.
and community to you. But can you talk a little bit about what and your Broadway debut? I mean, all the things that came
Yeah.
with it that you were not looking for.
Yeah. I've since become kind of like a keynote speaker, and I do master classes at NYU and USC and stuff like that. And one of the things that I focus on with my students is not when they have a job and they're so excited and life is good and 8 months later they get another job in life, but what about the 8 months in between, like the in between? Who are we, right? Who are we in between this work? If acting is the only thing that makes you really happy, you're not going to be happy most of the time, you know. And so one of the things we really talk about is, I think what human beings really want in life is to matter, to make a difference, and to matter, that they're valuable. And as an actor, that is often not the case. You do not feel like you matter. You don't feel like you're valuable. Someone has to choose you. They have to actually pick you to be a part of it. That's why what's so exciting now is kids can make their own movies on their iPhones and submit them to, that is so thrilling to me. That was not available to us back in the day.
Right.
And so having something like sign language really made me feel like I mattered. I was an interpreter for the 7 lower downtown hospitals, St. Vincent's, Bellevue, all of them, Beth Israel, and doctors had to wait for me to get there. And I would ride there on my motorcycle and take off my helmet and long hair and I'm like, I'm here, let's go. And I felt like in between jobs, I mattered. And
Yeah.
so when I walked into an audition, that foundation of feeling like my presence on the planet has made a difference somewhere walked in with me. And I just, I watch women like, "Oh, I feel so fat and I look so bad." And I'm like, God, I don't want to fall into that beauty myth. I fought it with my book, Wake Up, I'm Fat. It's really not about, oh, I love being fat. It's more about, I just gonna love myself. It's so miserable to hate yourself. I'm gonna figure out how to love myself just the way I am right now. And also having the sign language and bartending on Broadway, where I got to see plays, the loves, all of that combined, like putting together a life that mattered and fed me really is what leads you into an audition to be able to go, you play cribbage? If you don't have like, if I don't get this job, David, and I can see like I'm not gonna get it, I
Mhm.
gotta go deliver a baby in a ER room and sign, let the mom know what the baby sounds like. The mom who's deaf wants to know, does her baby sound like this? Or does the baby sound like they want to know. So I'm like, if I don't get this job, I'll be going into something really interesting and special. And because of that, I think all of those things served me. Without all of those, I don't know if I would have been such a badass in those situations. I might have also felt very needy and desperate to get things. But do you feel like I just got out of focus?
A little bit, but I like it. I
It's
like
really
this song.
good for the
I
complexion.
wondered, I wondered how I could get a little soft focus on this end. Speaking of, uh, one of the other things you did in the in between is have a child, and you did it as a single parent. Um, Not a single parent, you know the dad, but in terms of your choice, in terms of partnership versus non-partnership, in the traditional ways we understand it. And I got to hear, and I'm going to shout out to this episode because I think it was fascinating. There's a podcast host named Nikki Glasser who Milo Camryn's son did an episode of her podcast, and I learned so much. I thought, let me hear his perspective. And it was so much fun. But what you should know as you talk about like the work and the accomplishments as a mom, to have a recording, if I ever had a recording of my son talking about me on a podcast that has millions of listeners and downloads, the way your son talked about you as a mom, as a human, as an artist, as a friend, as an activist, as an inspiration, it was unbelievable, Cam, like just So beautiful. Um, so yeah, can you take us back a little bit to sort of this moment? I mean, I'm not surprised you took the bull by the horns and was like, I'm not waiting for life to be set up in a perfect little, bow for me. Talk a little bit about that time and what that's been like.
I always knew I wanted to have a kid.
Mm.
In my brain, I saw a little boy in overalls with long hair. I saw it from an early time. I'd have conversations with a make-believe kid, wondering, how I would answer questions. I just knew. And as my life kind of rolled along, and I just wasn't getting in the kind of relationships that I felt would be conducive to have a child. I bringing out all roads leading back to Marcia. Marcia had introduced me to a man she met. Marcia loves to do pottery. She's a beautiful potter. And she used to live in the West Village, and there was a pottery place there, and she was there potting, and this handsome, gorgeous guy was like, if you ever need any help, I'm happy to help you. He was also a potter, but a much more expert level. And she invited him to a party, and I met him, and I said, you are the most handsome man I've ever seen. If I turn 40 and I don't have a baby, can I have your sperm? I actually said that to this man. And he said, why not? And I'm like, I'm going to hold you to that. And we became friends. We
Yeah,
did. We'd go to
yeah.
the Hamptons, and we would do it. We were friends. And then I moved to LA, and trying to date, trying to find that special person. And as the time approached, like, what happened to my little golden boy in
Hmm.
my overalls and long hair? And as I was in my mid to late 30s, I started to put a list together. I started to put a list together of who I might reach out to, and Jeffrey was on the top of the list. And so I reached out to him, and he said, "Oh my God, I never really thought this would be real, but yeah, I'd love to go on that ride with you." And so we made a wonderful agreement, and it's been an incredible story that people have tried to emulate through, Milo's life, because they see how good it worked out. And Jeffrey helped me have Milo, and Milo knew from the beginning. We lived in a very liberal community. There was all kinds of different families. He
Yeah.
knew I was a single mom. His dad didn't live in the same, state. But we all go on vacations. We've been everywhere around the world. And it was just kind of phenomenal.
It
And
worked.
Milo he just grew up. Yes, okay. I brought him to the theater. I did bring him to the theater at an early age. Um, and he loved it. And then he said one day, I want to try to do this. And so he did an after school program. And then the train left the station. By the
Right.
time Milo was 18, he did 30 musicals, 3 a year for 10 years. And he has done every musical we can think of. And my poor friends have gone to every one of them. That's how sweet. In fact, Sherry O'Terry just introduced Milo at an award show. And her introduction was something like, I was at his bris, I was at Annie, I was at Anything Goes, I've seen every magic trick, and I was at his bar mitzvah. He's the best kid I know. And so he really was raised by my community of wonderful artists, it's and he's just a love. He really is a very special human.
And in the full circle of it all, you went to NYU and you're in the apartment that at some point became your home post college. And he decided to go to NYU. I mean, it's so full circle and beautiful. I want to talk about this apartment that looks like Nora Ephron was involved at some point in the beautiful styling of it. How are you back? Tell me about the apartment you're in right now.
Everybody has a New York story with their apartment, but I had changed my name. Here's another out of the box thing I did. I was not born Camryn Manheim. I hated the name I was born to. In between college and graduate school, in between being in Santa Cruz and being named Debbie Manheim, I changed my name to Camryn Manheim. And So I moved to New York and I was Cameron for the first time. And I had gotten this really cool apartment with this elderly guy, but it was on Bleecker Street. And I was so happy. I thought I was in the middle of New York, just as I wanted to be. And after living there for a couple of months, I came home to find everything I owned in the vestibule with a note saying, "You're a liar. Your name is not Camryn Manheim, and you don't go to NYU." Because I never changed it legally. So I guess he must have done some research and found out it wasn't Cameron, it was Debbie, and thought that I was just pulling the wool over his eyes.
Right.
Oxford changed everything. And so in an instant, I had to find a place, and I found this crazy loft on the Lower East Side. Big, beautiful loft, 15 windows, outdoor space. You can't really tell because we're in my kitchen because this is where my office is. But and I moved in here with two other people, and we had curtains up as rooms. It was a wreck. But through the years, I've done some renovations, and I no longer live with three people, and I live here by myself. And Milo has been here, and I really, when I went to LA to do the practice, I kept this apartment because I thought my son might go to NYU and he should have this apartment. And 25 years later, that was the case. He didn't stay long enough at NYU to live in this apartment because they make you stay in the dorm the first year. And, he was at NYU during COVID and left, and then his career just took off. And
Yeah.
he's like, "I'm not sure I'm going to go back."
Yeah.
And coming from a very Jewish intellectual family, that was a little rough. But the truth is, you don't have to go to college anymore. There are so many different paths, and you can still be as fulfilled and educated and go on amazing journeys. And that he's in New Zealand right this minute as we speak,
It's
shooting
incredible.
Zombies 4.
Wait, Zombies 4, created by our beloved David Light and others, and just the crazy full circleness of that as well. For listeners, Sharon Brous, who I had on a couple of episodes ago, who wrote that beautiful book, The Amen Effect, which is where you and I, Camryn, just recently reconnected when Sharon was doing the New York book tour scene. Her husband is one of the creators of Zombies. It's just such a funny connection and a beautiful Jewish connection in that way. We were talking about, jokingly about like 2.6 million followers that your son has on Instagram. This Zombies franchise has taken off, obviously. And he was on Dancing with the Stars. I mean, he's had these really like incredible high profile very early on in his
Yeah.
career. How are you handling, it's such a different time. I mean, and you've transitioned like really elegantly. You'll go to the Knicks game and you will share it with us. And I feel like you're very good at just managing, not just on a bicycle, what you want to share and what you don't want to share. How are you moving into 2024 and all of this kind of public and personal melding?
Yeah.
Um, Thoughts?
Well, I'm 62 years old. I never thought I'd be in a social media situation. I fought that as much as everybody fought it.
Yeah,
But then my son, as you were mentioning, Milo was 14 when a casting director basically saw him in a high school show. And it wasn't me trying to push him to be an actor or get agents. They saw him in a high school show. They go, "Manheim, related to Cameron," and they contacted me through my agent
right.
and said, "We would like him to audition for something." And one thing led to another,
The
and that is
rest
how
is history.
Zombies 1 was born. Milo got that show, and you know, 15-year-olds were now on social media. And if I wanted to kind of know what was happening, I started to follow him. I had to have a Snapchat account and an Instagram account. And I'm like, "I'm back in MySpace. I don't know what you're talking about." So yeah, in order for me to stay in touch, I kind of needed to jump on board. And in doing that, I just found some joy in sharing little, I really only share things about my show, about my son, and about theater. I pick the things that are really joyful to me. I am not, even though I am a political person and I'm an activist and I'm on the board of the ACLU, Southern California. I don't use my platform there, even though and mostly because, as you said, my son has 2.5 million followers. I would say 80,000 of my followers are under 15. They're
Right,
all of Milo's followers. So I'm
right.
sharing joy of living and being full in my life for his very young followers. Of course, I have some of my own followers, but there's other places for me to talk about other things. But
Right, to have those conversations. Speaking of full circle and the kind of meta of it all, is, you talked about early on one of your first jobs, and it was such a rite of passage for all of us, Mark Sachs putting you on your, sorry, Lynn Kressel maybe at the time, putting us on
yeah,
our
that's right.
first Law and Order. And the joy that, like, you could come back, you could be an ACLU lawyer one week and work in a
That's
restaurant the
right.
next. It was crazy. But you are
That was
back.
unusual. Nobody did that.
Nobody did that, but it kept all of us able to be in our theater companies, and those residuals were so meaningful. Um, and you could write it in your bio. I mean, it's a great, great thing, which, as guest stars, we got to do really interesting things on these procedurals. Guest stars have the heavy lifting
That's right.
sometimes in terms of the emotional um arc of that particular episode.
That's exactly
Talk
right.
talk about, all of a sudden I'm like, Deadline, I'm reading Deadline, and it's like Camryn Manheim is coming back to the latest season of Law and Order. Talk about how that happened. You get to come back to New York, your real boyfriend, on this show that is going to run, and with people who know what they're doing. So how did this happen? Tell me about getting the call. Was there any cribbage involved? What was the story with this job?
No, it's like it's a dream, right? You get the call and go, well, we have a very interesting proposal for you. And I'm like, okay, and they said, well, they're bringing Law and Order back. It's not a reboot. It's the same Law and Order. Sam Waterston's coming. Anthony Anderson's coming. It's the same group of people who make it. It's going to be the 21st season. And I have to tell you a crazy story too. And Dick Wolf wants you to come and play the lieutenant. I'm like, you mean just want what? Do I have to go into an audition? Do I have to go to a network audition? They're like,
Anything?
still, I'm, 40 years into all of this. And I'm like, do I need to put myself on tape? They're like, no, 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 this is an offer. And I was actually in Canada at the time doing a Lifetime show. And they're like, but we have to get you out a day early and you have to go directly to New York. So you're like, what? It is very jarring. It's like I had a tiny little suitcase and now I'm going from there to New York and I'm possibly moving to New York for
Right,
5 years.
right.
It was, so I had to just, I had to call Milo, I had to call my confidants and they're like, I just saw the greatest little quote the other day. It was, I'm not an empty nester, I'm a bird launcher. So I just launched my bird. He is flying high. And this is like the time for me to just go back to what I loved. And I said, yes, I'm in. And I came in and it just started this incredible journey. And I have re-fallen back in love with New York. I mean, New York has changed quite a bit.
Yeah.
There's, New York is in trouble sometimes, but there's still so much to celebrate. And we talked about riding bikes earlier, and really that is my happiest place to be, on a bicycle flying through New York, above, kind of riding above it a little faster than everyone. I don't have to obey traffic signs. Like everything about being on a bike for me is freedom. And I literally ride my bike up to 31st and 7th. It's 10 paces to get into Madison Square Garden to see the Knicks. I come out, I get back on that bike, I'm home in 12 minutes. It's like I've figured it out. And being on Law and Order has been really a dream come true. To come back to your roots where Dick Wolf truly was the first person to give me a break. Um, it can make me get very emotional, that where every audition I went to prior to getting on Law and Order was, you remind me of a young Kathy Bates. You're going to work in about 10 years. It's really confusing to me. Like 10 years I had to wait to work.
Right, right.
Because why? Because I was a big girl and no one saw 20-year-olds as being kind of big and sophisticated and funny and loud. They were all kind of pathetic, and you know what I mean? But when I grow up, I can be the grande dame, I can be the Arkadnas, and it was really confusing. And that's when I put on my boxing gloves and said, I'm going to prove you wrong. I am not going to wait 10 years. Now, it did take close to 10 years. I'm not going to lie. And I think for a lot of careers, it does take 10 years. And that's why those years beforehand matter so much. If you're going to let it break you or let it build you up. And that's where I think I learned most of my life skills. You teach people how to treat you. I say yes to everything. If you invite me anywhere, I'll say yes if I'm free, because staying home and saying no, nothing new happens. And you sit in your own head and think of all the things that are going wrong. You say yes, it's just a plethora of possibility. So Law and Order has been such a gift. And I walk down the streets or I go to opening nights and women really come up to me, and I can tell that they're half truthful and half kidding, but they're like, you got the job I wanted. You got it. It's like it happened. I'm like, I'm sorry. And the other half is like, I know I did, didn't
Yeah,
I?
yeah. But you did, because
I
you earned
did.
it. You earned it.
I got it.
And also part of it is also like people love to work with you, right? These things happen because it's not just talent. It's like the longevity comes from creating community wherever you go and bringing that work ethic and joy. I mean, you know, even even back in the day, like I felt like you were always so prepared. Like you always took the work really seriously. You never took yourself seriously in a way that was not fun. You took the craft seriously, but I don't know, you're just a joy spreader. It's an incredible thing. I am so personally proud of you and inspired by you. And I think this takeaway, this idea of like in between, um, it's like such a beautiful takeaway that life is the in between.
Yeah.
And that's true, whatever career or passion you have or follow. It's like, how do you find purpose? How do you find purpose? And and you have on every sort of level in your life. So thank you for sharing your stories today
My
and
pleasure.
your work with all of us and your enthusiasm for things that are, I don't know, all things art and all things good. Before I let you go, is there a little known fact that you can share?
Well, I've been thinking about that. I do overshare, but this is a little known fact that no one would, if I said I'd give you $1 million if you could think of what this little known fact would be, no one would ever come up with. But in a in another life, if I hadn't been an actor, I would have been a dentist.
I don't even have a follow-up. Although you do have incredible teeth. Um,
Thank you.
do you do anything? I mean, those are very white teeth. Can you give us any tips?
Well, I've actually had a lot of trouble with my teeth. So this is a lifetime of working on having a beautiful smile. But I have veneers, I have a bridge, I have a couple implants. Seriously. So, but I'm fascinated by it. I watch it in a mirror. And I would scale. Milo will kill me for telling you this, but I would clean his teeth with like a little scaler. Like I would be a dentist.
You
I
would
love it
be.
so much. I want to know everything that's in the drawers. I want to hold the things. It's crazy. But now I'm so proud of my smile, and I want to. I take such good care of my teeth. I know everything there is to know about dentistry.
I
Call me.
love it. I love it. All right. Well, 1-800 dentist. Thanks for being on the show today. Thank you for your friendship. And I can't wait to see you soon. Thank you.
Thank you for
Thank you.
having me. Thank you.
Mwah.